Welcome back to Family Corner. We're here with Arthur talking about fire safety. And at the end of the last segment, we started talking about kitchen safety, and we'll continue with that now.
Okay, so as we mentioned before, with a pot on the stove, you'd want to cover it to suffocate the fire. You can use baking soda and just sprinkle that on, and that will put out the fire as well. And in fact, some extinguishers do have baking soda in them, and they're rated for that kind of fire. But most of the extinguishers, as I'll show shortly, are rated for all kinds of fire, A, B, and C, and I'll explain what that is.
Okay.
If there's a fire in the oven or the toaster oven or the microwave, just leave the door closed. It's in a metal box, it's not going to go anywhere.
Right, okay.
If you open up the door, now you allow the smoke to come out, but you also let the oxygen in that helps to fuel the fire and help it grow. So if you just leave the door open, there's a good possibility that it will use all the oxygen inside that metal box and the fire will go out.
If you leave the door closed.
Sorry.
Yes.
Take two. We should leave the door closed. If possible, you can pull the plug or disconnect the electricity on a toaster oven or a microwave, and that would remove the heat if you can't turn off the knob or turn off the heat.
Okay.
With that.
Now, if you have a fire in your toaster oven or in a pot on the stove, do you still call 911?
Oh yes, anytime there's a fire, you should call 911 and call the fire department.
Okay.
Because what if things go wrong and you can't put it out, or you get injured, or someone's overcome by smoke or whatever.
Oh, okay, so there's no fire too small?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. We don't mind coming, it doesn't matter what happens. The thing is, it's better to have us come than not come. Right. Because as I said, if something should go horribly wrong, at least that help is arriving. One of the problems or the uncomfortable truths about fire response is that, as I mentioned before, unless we know there's a fire happening, we're not coming.
Right, okay.
So it's very important to make that, or to call us or to make us aware that there's something going on so that we can respond. So that's either the fire alarm system will do that. As I mentioned, calling 911 is the best way to ensure that there's a response, because then you know you've spoken to someone and they're going to send the fire department.
Right, okay. So don't be embarrassed. Just
no, not at all.
If it's a pot on the stove, it's okay. Just call 911 and explain everything, and they'll be over. And
also, if it's a false alarm, let's say you live in an apartment building, and someone's either pulled the pull station for no reason, or it is just a pot on the stove or burnt toast or something like that that didn't turn into a big fire, to call us to let us know. That way we can downgrade our response. At least one truck will come.
Big trucks. That's right. Okay.
Okay. So one of the most important things that we want to see in a building, especially a residential building, is some kind of detection system or some kind of alarm system that alerts the people inside of it. So it is currently law in Ontario to have a smoke alarm.
Oh, you brought some toys.
Yes.
Okay.
So this smoke alarm it's an ionization type of smoke alarm. There's two types: ionization, photoelectric. And what that means to you is that the ionization is a little cheaper, and that's not important. But what's important is that it's very sensitive to smaller smoke particles.
Okay.
So they're more common, the ionization type. And that's why when you burn toast, or sometimes if it's too close to the washroom, the steam from the shower can set off a false alarm.
Even steam?
Yes.
Oh,
because it gets
okay.
into the detector.
Right.
We call this a fire alarm a smoke alarm, because it has a detection feature as well as the alarm feature.
Okay.
In a fire alarm system, you'll see a detector on the ceiling, either a heat or a smoke detector, and that just detects. It sends a signal to the alarm panel, and that sounds the alarm, and there's separate alarms that go off.
Okay.
So those are detectors. This is an alarm.
Okay, so that's...
So if it's too close to the washroom or near the kitchen and you're getting those false alarms, the photoelectric might be a better option, because it's less sensitive to the smaller particles.
Okay.
It's equally as effective, but you probably won't get the false alarms that you might get with the ionization, so it's a good option.
So if your fire alarm goes off all the time and you're tempted to take the batteries out or turn it off when you cook, then it's better to change to a photoelectric.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. So the smoke alarms, this one is fairly typical now. There's a test button as well as a hush button.
Okay.
So the test button is to test it, obviously. The hush button is, if it should activate, is to just press that. That silences the beeping of the alarm. It doesn't turn it off. So if there continues to be smoke or steam or whatever, there's continuing alarm type condition, it will reactivate.
In a couple of seconds or minutes, okay.
That's right. So, as you mentioned, taking the battery out of the smoke alarm is a bad thing because without that battery, this doesn't work.
Right.
Now, in many new buildings, new homes, the smoke alarms are hardwired into the electrical system of the building. Right? And very often they're interconnected, which means that if one activates, they all activate, which is a good feature.
Right.
But unfortunately, that the electrical ones may or may not have a battery backup. So if the power goes out, they don't work.
Oh, okay.
So after about 7 or 10 years when these need to be replaced, if you have one that doesn't have a battery backup, it might be an idea to get one that does.
Okay, do they have a date on them, or you just have to remember when you bought them?
They do now have dates on them, either a little sticker. This one shows 2005. So 7 or 10 years from that date, you should replace it.
Sounds good.
Okay. The same thing for CO detectors or carbon monoxide detectors, which are very common these days. They have a 3 to 5 year, sometimes 7-year lifespan, and they need to be replaced as well.
Okay.
This is a typical extinguisher that you might find for the home. It's a, just take this out of here.
And this is not a toy.
No, this one's real. This is mounted on the wall, usually by an exit.
Okay.
So that typically in the kitchen, if there's a fire on the stove, you'd put it by an exit, so where you're likely to run, you're going to run to the exit. When you pass the extinguisher, you may decide to pick it up and use it, and now your back is at the exit, so if you can't put out the fire or the extinguisher doesn't work, you have somewhere to run. Never allow the fire to get between you and the exit, because if you have to leave, you have to jump through the fire, right? So, so this is an ABC fire.
Okay.
Right? A is for ordinary combustibles, things you throw in the trash like wood, paper, plastics, that kind of thing. And those fires you can use water on. A B-class fire, and this has pictures on it too, so it shows you what it's good for or not good for. A B-class is a flammable liquid or grease fire. Okay. And you can't use water, as I explained earlier. So this dry chemical that's in here, it's kind of like, it's a very fine powder. Okay. It creates a blanket over that liquid and suffocates the fire. And then there's C-class, which is charged electrical. And what's important to remember about that is that, as I mentioned with the toaster fire, if you pull the plug or cut off the electricity, that ceases to be an electrical fire now, because there's no electricity any longer. So then it defaults to either an A or B class, depending on what's burning inside the toaster. Okay. So that's important. So when you use this, you want to check the gauge, make sure that there's enough pressure. The needle is in the V, so it's either here or in overcharge, and that's okay. If it's in recharge like this, then it's probably not okay. So you want to check that. If you're going to use the extinguisher, especially if you're in an office building or an apartment building, tell someone where you're going, because if you don't come back or go outside, arrive outside, we need to know where you've gone so that we can come and rescue you. Okay. When you pick up the extinguisher, hold it by the bottom handle. There's a tie wrap here to hold this pin in. Right? If you hold it by the top and the bottom, it grabs it like a pliers or a vise, and it makes it difficult to pull it out. Okay, so very easily twist and pull out. And that basically, like a grenade, although it's not like that, it allows you to use that. You squeeze and make sure something comes out of this nozzle. Some extinguishers have a hose. So in this case, you'd hold it like this or like this. Hold it and aim this way. If there's a hose, you'd hold it in one hand and the hose in the other hand and aim the hose. When you approach the fire, you want to squeeze down and aim at the base of the fire to spread that powder at the base of the fire. Because at the base of the fire is what the material that's actually burning, right? So that's what you want to cover. You don't want to just cover the flame. That's right. Okay. So when you hear the alarms, sometimes kids think that it's time to stop, drop, and roll, but that's only if there's fire on your clothes. And the reason you want to do that is that so you smother the fire by rolling around.
Okay.
If you're older and you're afraid about dropping on the floor, you can ease yourself down to the floor and roll around. Or if clothes are on fire, maybe a sleeve, you can use a blanket or a towel or something to suffocate the fire.
Okay.
And also, we also really want to encourage people to teach children that matches and lighters are dangerous.
Yes.
And we're all curious about fire. We all like to watch it, watch the fire in the fireplace or a candle burning. But sometimes kids like to see matches or lighters burning, and sometimes want to pretend or play around and see how things burn like paper.
Yes, they want to blow at the candle and play with the wax.
That's right. So very important to explain to them that those are dangerous, and that if they see them, not to touch them, and to tell grown-ups to put them somewhere safe, out of reach of, so kids can't start fires.
Yes. So I was also wondering about when, speaking of kids and families, to make an escape plan, right? We need to know.
Right. As I mentioned, it's very important to have an escape plan, and everybody should know where the meeting place is, and how to get out. If you live in a bungalow on a single story, going out the windows may be an option, but obviously on the second floor or an apartment building, that's not an option. So if you're on the second floor or higher and you can't get out of the building, and if in an apartment building setting, if you're in the apartment, close the door to your apartment if there's smoke in the hallway and you can't escape.
Okay.
Go to a window farthest away from that door.
Yeah.
Put something under, and close doors as you go. And put something underneath the door to keep the smoke and flame, or smoke actually, from coming in. And if you can tape the seam of the door, do that as well.
Wow, okay. And you can put blankets or towels under the doors, because the reason that we close all of the doors is to keep the fire separate from places that are not burning, right?
Yeah. It's more important to keep the smoke from spreading, because that's really what kills most people.
Oh,
it's not the flames. So once you've done that, you go to a window. If there's smoke in the room, you can open the window for air. If you need to get more air, you can, or if there's smoke coming in and it's a little too much, you can put a blanket or a coat over your head and lean out. The smoke will go around you, and then you can breathe air underneath. If you're on a balcony, you can lie down on the balcony floor, and then the smoke will rise above you.
Oh, that's great. And then for children, we have to just go over this every once in a while so that everyone knows.
It's good to practice, because by practicing you find out where the mistakes are.
Of course.
And unfortunately, sometimes children may run back into a building to get their favorite toy, and we don't want that.
Right,
sometimes children can become afraid and want to hide in the closet or underneath the bed. And so, because maybe the smoke alarm makes too much noise and it scares them, and if they hide, the smoke will find them, but the firefighters may not. So it's important to teach them that. Also, it's important to teach about crawling under smoke. So if you are in a corridor or in a room that has smoke, you can crawl underneath the smoke, because there's cooler air that you can breathe underneath as the smoke rises to the ceiling.
Yes.
And also about opening doors, because as I said, or you said, we want to close doors to prevent smoke from traveling. When we come to a closed door, we want to make sure it's safe to open it. So use the back of your hand, because it's more sensitive. Reach as high as you can and feel for heat down the door.
All right.
If it's cool enough you feel you can open it, test the handle before touching it, because it's usually metal and it can be hot. And then open the door, and if there's smoke, crawl underneath the smoke. If it's too hot, then leave the door closed and try to get out another way, or go to a window or a balcony, as I mentioned.
As you said, Well, we're out of time. But thank you very much. And you have a website, you said? You have...
Yeah, if you want it, there's a website that we posted on the Family Corner webpage. As well, you can always go to the Ottawa Fire website, which is at ottawa.ca. And there's links to fire prevention and all other information that you may want.
Well, thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye for now. We'll see you next week.